Welcome back to the broadcast. We continue with the bulletin. Now, Ipsos Kenya has released findings of a national survey that focused on perception of Kenyans in the graft fight. Among the highlights are perceived magnitude of the corruption problem, the perceived most corrupt present and past leaders, expectations of corruption convictions, as well as perceived justice equity when pursuing big people versus ordinary citizens. The survey was done between July the 25th and August the 2nd, and 2,016 respondents were sampled. Again, NYS, the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, the sugar importation and maize importation topped the list of scandals in the survey. And here are some of the public's perception on the graft fight. Well, we now take a look at perhaps what was raised in the state of corruption in the country. We well know that Kenyans' perceptions, 82% are actually aware of at least one scandal by July 2018, up from 65% in June 2016. We'll also take a look at the number 32%. Now, that represents a fraction of Kenyans who are actually well known in this particular thing. We move on, still on Kenyans' perceptions. 3/4 of Kenyans doubt convictions will take place among the 42% who could name names. We also have 69% of Jubilee supporters who think no convictions will occur. Remember, these are the latest statistics given by Ipsos Kenya, who did a graft survey recently. Now, 69% of Jubilee supporters think no convictions will occur. This we mentioned earlier on, where 60% of Jubilee supporters feel President Uhuru Kenyatta is genuinely fighting graft in this particular country. Now, this comes in the offset of President Uhuru Kenyatta saying that he will not actually continue with this same way that country has been moving on in terms of graft and theft of public funds. We also have 39% of NASA supporters who feel the president is genuine in fighting corruption, where 26% actually believe the country is headed in the right direction. And we also have 60% who say Kenya is headed in the wrong direction. Stark statistics right there, 26% saying the country is headed in the right direction, with 60% saying Kenya is headed in the wrong direction. Remember, this was done recently between July the 25th and the August 2nd, this particular year, with 2,016 respondents. Moving on, barriers in the fight against graft in this particular country. We have 41% who believe that there is political interference in the fight against graft in this particular country, with 15% who say poverty and corruption are among investigators, with 11% saying that weak laws are actually pushing this fight against corruption down. Now, these are the latest statistics, and we will be joined by reporter Maswa, who is at the INM building, as we take a look at the latest developments, just as Ipsos Kenya has actually given us. Now, Maswa, if you can hear me, 82% of Kenyans are aware of at least one corruption scandal that has hit this particular country. Let's give us a stark, perhaps, statistics of what we should expect going forward in the fight against graft.
Now, looking at the number of people who are aware of corruption scandals, what is that the more educated a person is in the country, the more he was aware of corruption scandals. And this was attributed to their availability, or their ability to access the media and also read newspapers. Now, looking at some of the interesting things that stood out today is that there were questions in the survey asking that, can a corrupt person be a good leader? And surprisingly, about 10% on average of all Kenyans believe that a corrupt person can still be a good person. But again, we still have to break down the figures and look at the demographics. Who were these people who think that a corrupt person can still be a good leader? Now, looking at the Ipsos survey, the figures here say that 12% of Jubilee supporters believe that a corrupt leader can still be a good one. And 7% of NASA supporters also believe that a corrupt person can still be a good leader. But again, this takes us back to February this year when Transparency International released its yearly or annual corruption perception index. And the numbers that we saw is that Kenya was ranked number 143 out of 180 in terms of corruption perception, which means that number 180 in the entire list of the Transparency International Corruption Index, number 180, that brings us to Afghanistan and Somalia. Those are some of the most corrupt countries in the world, and Kenya is number 143. But looking at the way Kenyans are perceiving corruption and how it can be fought, or whether the war on corruption can be won or not, it tells you that Kenyans are generally not a very optimistic lot. Back to you.
Well, thank you, McNamaswa, for those statistics. This is right after Ipsos Kenya released the latest graft survey in the corruption levels in this particular country. Thank you so much. Well, we now take a short break right here on KTN News as we bid farewell to our viewers on KTN Home. In case of more information, as we continue giving you the latest developments, do stay with KTN News. We'll be right back.
This is KTN News.